everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day. A lovely blue sky on the way in this morning. Looks like it's starting to cloud over a little bit more. It was certainly frosty out there. It was the first real frost this year that Mother Nature had an opportunity to do some pretty wild designs on the hood of my vehicle. I saw a number of vehicles. Some people are posting them on social media today about some of the intricate designs that Jack Frost creates, as the old saying goes, and it was a bit of a surprise in the parking lot today too. With that rain that we had yesterday, it was that snowy, rainy mix, and it kind of froze overnight. And there was a couple of black ice puddles in the parking lot, and one caught me. I didn't fall, but it certainly sent me for a little bit of a slide. So it's that time of the year again. I know. It's me complaining about the weather, right? Anyway, it looks like the sun is going to be with us at least for a majority of the day today. But the news on the weather is that we're expecting to see some showers tonight, and they're going to carry on through the day tomorrow. So if you have to do some stuff outside, or perhaps put up some more of those decorations, and I'm going to talk about decorations in a minute here, this would probably be the perfect opportunity if you're not at work and are able to do it, because it looks like we're going to have a washout for the next couple of days. But the good news is that rain is helping, right? It's making a difference. We've seen the restrictions come off over at Lake Major. We've also saw yesterday that the city is now able to scale back some of the water delivery that it's been doing throughout much of the summer because of the drought conditions that we had. Still some happening, but not as much. And if you've been using that service, you've been going to get bottled water or going to the fire halls to do so, you might want to check with the HRM website. They've got an updated list of times and availabilities. The list is rather lengthy. I'm not going to read the whole thing out here, but if you are taking part in that program, best to check with either 311 or to go onto the halifax.ca website and check that stuff out. Big story today is that the CEO of Nova Scotia Power is to appear before a legislative committee this afternoon about out of whack, as I've been calling them, power bills and this estimation scheme that many of you have been calling the show to talk about. Now, both opposition parties put out media releases on this yesterday. So did the governing Houston government. I'm seeing a lot of MLAs of all political stripes posting that this thing's happening. It's the Standing Committee of Natural Resources, I think. It's at 1 o'clock this afternoon. If you want to watch it, it will be available on the legislature's TV channel. If you've not used that service before and you want to watch this, just go on to the provincial government website. You can find all the links there. It will be interesting to watch Mr. Gregg as he faces some of our elected politicians, right? My experience with these things is that before these committees is that there tends to be a lot of bluster. There tends to be a lot of rhetoric, maybe is the word I'm looking for. There tends to be a lot of venting, maybe is another word I'm looking for. But at the end of the day, very little happens. And that's unfortunate. It would be nice if the provincial government was able to go through this process and have the CEO, Peter Gregg, on the hot seat and were able to compel some change. But as I mentioned before, my experience with these legislative committees is that there's some theater, but very little happens at the end of it. What do you want to hear today from your MLAs? And what do you want to hear today from the CEO of Nova Scotia Power? I mean, they've already apologized. They've already said on this program that they weren't going to charge any late fees. They weren't going to charge any interest. They weren't going to disconnect. However, I've been getting emails from some people who say that isn't the situation with them, that they've been put into collections already. So hopefully we'll get some clarity on that today. But what do you want to hear from Peter Gregg today? Might be something you want to talk about in the open hour. Also yesterday, and this one I haven't discussed with Vanessa, so I'll probably get the Vanessa Van Den Ness stare down here. But and by the way, Vanessa Van Den Ness, outstanding work. Doesn't she do great work? She really does, right? And she's always so pleasant on the other end of the line when we go through the open hours. Anyway, had a discussion yesterday in the corporate world, not necessarily in this radio station world, but in the corporate world, right? About the appropriateness of putting up decorations in the workplace to celebrate the Christmas season. Now, full disclosure, and those that have been into the studio today will know that we've decorated for Christmas here. I've got some decorations up in the talk studio. Vanessa's got lights hanging from all of the computer monitors and such. And there's a tree in our common area, and there's some other Christmas decorations all spread throughout the radio station. But there is a movement out there now that is considering things like trees and lights and stockings to be inappropriate for a place of work. I'm very interested to see and to hear what your thoughts are on that. Is the workplace, is it appropriate to have Christmas decorations spread throughout your workplace? I think it lightens everybody's mood. I think it puts everybody into the festive spirit. I think it becomes a conversation starter, particularly on some of the designs of the lighting, particularly in Vanessa's studio. But that being said, there are some out there that suggest it's inappropriate to have, as I mentioned, snowmen and Christmas elves and trees and whatever else people have up in their offices. Might be something else that you want to discuss when we open up the telephone lines. That's going to happen today after 11 o'clock here on the program. I hope that you can join the conversation. We have a busy show today. It is, of course, Tuesday, so that means that Dr. Rob Thacker will be here, and there was some interesting and exciting space news that happened in the last 7 days, and we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Thacker, who, of course, is a professor and an astrophysicist over there at St. Mary's University. I hope that you can join that conversation. That's going to happen at noon today. So lots to talk about here on the program. Very glad that you're able to spend some time with us. We're going to take our first break a little bit early today because I really want to get into the new release of the point-in-time count. That was released, I think it was released today. If not, it was this week. We got a better look at the homeless situation in HRM. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Is it remaining stagnant? The executive director of the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, Michael Kablan, will be in the studio to bring us up to date on the very latest data on people living rough in HRM. Hope you can stick around. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back, folks. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. The annual point-in-time homelessness count was conducted back in October 15th and through into the morning of October 16th, and gives us the latest snapshot. Probably the best way to describe this is because they call it a point-in-time count. My understanding of it is that it's a 1 day, it's a 24-hour-ish look at what the homelessness situation is in HRM. Gives us an idea of trends, I think, and it gives us an idea of just the raw numbers of people that are out there living rough as we continue to deal with the homelessness situation that we have here in HRM. Very pleased to welcome into the program the executive director to Affordable Housing Association in Nova Scotia. That's Michael Kablan. Michael, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Dan?
I am well. Am I correct in my analysis of what this is? It's really an opportunity for your folks to get out there and take a look at what's happening on the ground that day, right?
Yeah, it is exactly that. It's a snapshot of homelessness over a one-night period in HRM. Dozens of volunteers from many different organizations come together. It's a major logistical operation in our community. We kind of slice the city up into areas. People go out and walk the streets, go to areas where we know or have seen evidence of people experiencing homelessness. We also coordinate with shelters and other shelter-type environments and ask them to send us information on who's and how many people are spending the night with them that night. Our team takes those numbers away, they crunch them, and we were able to put out these numbers yesterday evening.
So the way that it works is this isn't just HRM's designated encampment sites. We hear an awful lot about that. This is there are people that living in undesignated areas, perhaps some living in the woods and living in different areas and in different facilities in the city.
Yeah, homelessness is more than just what we see.
Right.
And it's more than just the encampments. It's more than just the people in the woods. You know, the definition of homelessness is in the name. You have no home. And so what we're trying to capture, what we do capture with the point-in-time count, is the minimum number of people we could, with the team we have and the plan we've made, who are experiencing homelessness. They could be in a shelter. They could be in a pallet. They could be in anything that isn't an adequate home, essentially, that ends their homelessness. So the intention of the homelessness support system is to capture people in the emergency they're in. It's an emergency response, and then connect people with pathways to housing. And so what's interesting and what the numbers tell us to move through it is that we're still having a hard time moving people through to pathways and housing as quickly as they're coming into the system. And so while the numbers are nuanced and we're seeing growth in some areas and numbers going down in other areas, overall, people are still having a hard time finding adequate housing as they move through the system, whether they're living in a tent at a designated encampment or whether they've been living in a shelter for a long time.
So bottom line number, I think, is 1,150. That's kind of the baseline number of people that are in that situation that you described.
Right. So 1,150 was the total count we could find. That was compared to 1,132 last year. Last year, we added a survey, and every 3 years we'll be doing a survey. So we do find more people when we put the survey together. There's usually a small gift for participating in the survey, so more people come out. In particular, people experiencing what we call hidden homelessness.
Couch surfing.
Exactly, couch surfing or staying with a friend or whatever that might look like. So we weren't able to capture a hidden homelessness number this time. Last year there was almost 400 people who were experiencing hidden homelessness. That would likely be a similar number this year, again, because the numbers were overall comparable. But we did see an increase in people staying in shelters, about 63% increase of people living in shelters on the night, or staying in shelters on the night of the 15th of October. We saw a 23% increase rather.
Right.
We saw a 63% increase in people living in unsheltered environments. And so that might be the designated encampments we see, as well as undesignated areas or other types of outdoor living or living rough, as many describe it. We also saw a significant increase of people living in their cars. And so we were more intentional this year about trying to find people. We had evidence that there were more people living in their cars, and so we actually put a team together to go out and find people living in parking lots in your local retail or industrial park overnight.
34 people, at least that was the latest number of people living in their vehicles, which I would imagine be difficult to identify because they're mobile, so they can move from spot to spot to spot, correct?
Yeah, and that's why we do the count at night as
Right.
well, because the intention is people tend to move around less at night. They tend to settle down for the evening. And so, when we're looking at cars, it's not a person wearing construction clothes taking a nap in front of a building under construction. There's evidence of, windows papered up, lots of belongings and so on as well.
The latest number of you mentioned an increase in people in shelters, 23.5 or 24% increase in that. Is that because more shelter space is available and people are finding better accommodations to suit them?
So shelters are meant to be an emergency response. It's meant to catch you if you have nowhere else to go. And so the province has done an incredible job in making investments in solutions and in some of these temporary solutions like shelters. And so with more shelters available, we obviously will see more people choosing to use them. The province has also made significant investments in other things. So we've seen shelter diversion go down by a significant amount. I think by, and I don't have it right in front of me, apologies, but about 90% in shelter diversion has gone down because of direct provincial investments in supportive and permanent supportive housing.
And that's these hotel programs and those kind of things, correct?
Yeah, so they've been able to move people from those hotels into permanent supportive housing solutions. And so there's good here as well, right? The province and the federal government, municipality have all been working on providing housing solutions. What we really know is the approach needs to shift. I think we've built a system of emergency response. We have shelter capacity for people who find it an appropriate solution for them, but we're still seeing people choosing to live outdoors or live rough or live in encampments at a higher number than we saw last year. And so the conversation needs to shift more from let's get people into something, and let's get people into something that is appropriate for them. The shelter environment may not be appropriate for everyone, right? People who have vehicles, people who have pets, rather, people who are partners, people who need the freedom to come and go. They want to leave at midnight to go and have a cigarette or visit their friend or whatever that might be. Some people may be traumatized in a security environment, if they've had experience with law enforcement or police that were negative. So all these things kind of come together as to why a shelter may not be appropriate and why someone might choose to live in an encampment or in an outdoor solution. And so we really need to shift this discussion to what is appropriate. And so we know it's cheaper to give someone housing, that, there's national and international evidence that shows so. It's just about how do we create those appropriate supportive housing solutions. And, the Ozanam Place, which was announced, which was opened last month, is an excellent example of an appropriate solution for people who may be experiencing homelessness, who may not fit well into a shelter environment. But when you give them housing and you give them supports, they can end the crisis they're living in. And imagine living in that crisis yourself of homelessness and have a secure, safe place to wake up in every morning and not worry about where they're going to go back to bed to that night. And when that happens, that person's life is completely transformed. And with those supports on site, they can start to rebuild their life and do the things you and I like to do, have hobbies and find employment and all the other things as well.
Michael, when you do these point-in-time surveys, do you dig into the situations of the people that are in there? And the reason I ask that question is people tend to have a vision of who somebody is that's homeless, and not the same experience having toured some of the shelter sites myself, or having some of the people that are living in those designated encampment sites that call the show, that are getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning and putting on their work boots and putting quotes around that and going to work, and they're working but still are unable to find accommodation. Do you dig into that at all?
So that was the survey I spoke to earlier, which we did last year. We'll do that again in 2027. But 39% of the people we spoke to last year said the only barrier to housing was not any of the kind of stereotypes as you spoke to. It was just simply they did not have enough money to afford housing. So they might have been employed, they might have been receiving other benefits or pensions, and just could not find an affordable place to live. So appropriate solutions to homelessness look different, right? So AHANS is a developer of affordable housing in addition to our work around homelessness we do. We provide appropriate solutions to homelessness every day. We house people from homelessness into our housing on almost every day. So that's all they need. Once you give them housing, there's nothing else needed. We also partner with other organizations to provide what we call supportive housing. So supportive housing has other things, employment support. If someone's living with mental illness, if someone's living with disability, if someone may be living with an addiction, all of those supports are on site to help that person kind of stabilize those things. And as we talked about earlier, kind of rebuild their life outside of the crisis they've been living in. So 39% of the people we talked to last year, and I would say is probably similar to the number for this year, which we would extrapolate over, would be it's just a cost of living thing. It's nothing beyond not having enough money to eat, to do the things that they may need to do, medication or what that might be, and also find an affordable place to live.
How do you do that? How do you create an appropriate housing space? We know the market is insanely expensive. We know that there's a shortage of housing. We know there's a shortage of affordable housing in HRM. How do you go out and build these things? Do you go out and purchase these things? How does your organization put somebody into a more permanent housing solution?
Because we do it every day, and there's many partners who have been doing it. There's hundreds and hundreds of housing units that have been created specifically for people experiencing homelessness. And so, government, and the provincial government in particular, has been a big partner in this work. They help fund the acquisition of existing buildings. It might be an old hotel that gets renovated, like the Overlook, which we operate. It might be a new build, like Ozanam Place on Brunswick Street. And there's hundreds and hundreds of examples like that across the region. We know how to do it. It's just a matter of finding additional opportunities to do so. I think the message as well is, there's a feeling of austerity, right? The budget has a big deficit. The federal government has got a big deficit. The municipality's talking about a big tax hike. And so people want government to spend less. I think what this tells us is this isn't an area where we can spend less. We need to do more. And I think, the community of service providers out there, whether it's organizations like AHANS or YWCA or Irony House, Welcome Housing, many of those that are partners of ours are willing to do this work. We need our partnership with government to continue. Making homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring is possible. It takes investment. It takes partnership. We know how to do it. Many communities have. It's just a matter of committing to do so.
We saw an increase from 1,132 to 1,150 from year over year. You've had this data for for several years now. Is it slowing? Are we seeing less people getting into the homelessness situation?
So this would be the first year we've done the count without the survey. And so we were expecting a similar or smaller number, not because the numbers decreased, but because without the survey, we're unable to capture everybody. Right. I would say the problem is still growing. I would say more and more people are still experiencing homelessness, in particular because of the amount of investments that have been made, and the numbers are still coming in higher in many categories. And so more work needs to be done. And until we shift our focus to supportive housing, affordable housing, and start making those investments, which we also know to be less expensive than the current system, we'll continue to see numbers like this.
HRM's new guideline is to close the remaining 2. There's one that's being closed now, but there's the remaining 2 designated encampment sites within the next 18 to 24 months. What kind of impact will that have, do you think, on getting appropriate housing for people if these sites are gone?
Yeah, well, we know the status quo shows that de-designated encampments doesn't solve anything, right? Unless you provide someone an appropriate solution, closing an encampment doesn't solve the chronic issue, which is homelessness. It might solve the immediate issues of public safety in a particular community. And so, our hope is, and I think HRM is a smart and committed group. With that, we don't want to see encampments either. But it means we need to see the types of affordable and supportive housing for the individuals that live there that is an appropriate solution. And so I think, I would suspect that over the 2 years while HRM's doing this work and other government partners will be coming together to find more appropriate solutions for these folks.
One of the numbers, we're almost out of time, but one of the numbers that kind of jumps off the page is the number of people identified as homeless that are currently in the hospital system. And we know the problems with beds and access and weights and those kind of things. That number growing significantly. And
people who live experiencing homelessness, one, there's the emotional trauma and the toll that takes on your body, as well as the physical trauma if you're living unsheltered, which would mean your higher needs. So you're going to be in and out of hospital more. So that's just another data point of people who have experienced chronic homelessness have higher healthcare needs. And so we saw more people on the night of October 15th in the hospital than last year.
Michael, if people want to learn more about the point in time survey that has been released and more about the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, our website is robust, www.ahans.ca. If you want to, and you can kind of navigate the different areas we do work. If you really want to get to the report, put a backslash and type statistics, and that'll take you right to the page where we're putting data out around homelessness.
And then you can dig into that and extrapolate what you'd like. What's the next one? Do we wait until next October, November, or do you do one in the spring? How does that work?
So this is a nationally coordinated account. So our nationally coordinated count, we're working with our partners right across Canada under the coordination of the federal government. So the next one will happen around the same time. They can start as early as just after Thanksgiving, and they can go as late as November, but that's the window where we can kind of get comparable numbers. We went in November last year. We chose to go a little bit earlier this year to kind of beat daylight savings and have an extra hour of light when we're out on the streets.
Fair enough. And you said this is a national. Do you do comparisons of the situation here and to different cities across the country?
So we're one of the first communities out, and I attribute that to the awesome team at both AHANS and the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center for putting this together so quickly. Other organizations there's 60 community entities that do this across Canada. They'll put their reports out in good time, and then when that's done, Ottawa will put a comparable report together.
Michael, I appreciate it. I know you're busy today.
Thank you so much.
That's Michael Kablan. He is he is the executive director at the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to dig into mining in the province of Nova Scotia. The Premier in here on Friday saying that all options are on the table, and but what does it really mean? A conversation with the Professional Prospectors and Developers Association of New Scotland. Ron Mills, the president of that organization, will be your guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show continues. If you were listening to our show on Friday with our conversation and calls and questions with the Premier, a couple of questions asked about the mining industry in Nova Scotia, particularly in that case with the gold mining industry. And the Premier, a couple of times when we talked about resource development here in the province, said that and I'm paraphrasing, but said that for the most part, all options are on the table, right? And we've seen a couple of different instances where the Premier has lifted moratoriums, and that one obviously goes directly to uranium. We've seen a gold mine restarted in Nova Scotia recently, as the Premier looks to resource extraction and resource development. I guess is probably the best way to develop or to describe it, as a solution to some of our financial issues here in Nova Scotia. Not a lot, at least I can speak for myself in this. I have a limited knowledge of how the mining industry works in Nova Scotia and sort of the process or processes that are in place to ensure that this is done safely and to ensure that the industry continues to thrive in Nova Scotia. So I was very happy to hear that we were able to book our next guest, and I'm going to introduce him now. It is the president of the Professional Prospectors and Developers Association of New Scotland, and that's Ron Mills. Ron, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm glad you're able to spend a few minutes with us, Ron, because to be honest, I know a little bit about how mining and prospecting works in Nova Scotia, but not a whole lot. And I know it's an industry that gets talked a lot about, but not a lot of people from the industry talking about it, if that makes any sense.
Well, that's true. There really has been kind of a vacuum with respect to industry messaging. People in the industry just try to pay attention to what they're doing with respect to their work. And if they have some decisions that go against them, they usually just take their lumps and go away. But it's become more critical now with the situation that we're in, that we get a little bit more serious about having some messaging. And when you actually did your opening monologue there, you mentioned that a decision has been made to open a gold mine, and that we have a new gold mine now. The truth is, actually, we do not have a working gold mine in this province. As a matter of fact, we don't have a single working metal mine, not even one. And that problem has festered. Essentially, it's developed over decades. A lot of people don't understand how the industry is structured. They see the mining industry as mines, and the fact is, in Nova Scotia, we really have quite we don't have much of a mining industry at all, and we have explorers exploring, but they can't break through that barrier to get their mines turned into their targets turned into mines. Miners actually mine. They run pits and underground operations, and these things involve a lot of engineering. The prices of the commodities change daily, sometimes hourly. It involves a lot of money. They have to raise a lot of capital on stock markets to, get consortiums of banks involved to invest lots of money in very expensive equipment and build a mill. But explorers, which is basically what we have in Nova Scotia, all they do is explore. The exploration part of the industry is more heavily stratified with prospectors at the bottom, and they, for the most part, don't mine, and miners, for the most part, don't explore.
Right. So the prospector's end of the explorer, the prospector end of thing is to go out and try to find new deposits. Is that what you do, or do you look at old ones, or do you do both?
You do both. Yeah. Okay. The mineral industry, largely, it's been portrayed by a lot of those people who oppose it as consisting of these huge, well-funded multinational companies that come in and crush opposition with money and ignore environmental protections and essentially do whatever they want. But the reality is pretty much the opposite. Prospectors and the small junior companies that we have in Nova Scotia, they're often your neighbors, and you don't even know it. They're doing this kind of work on weekends. They're part of your community, and that's how they see themselves. And they want to try to make a positive impact on their local communities, hopefully being part of projects that will employ local people and bring wealth locally while responsibly protecting the environment that they live in themselves. So the companies and prospectors, another thing that people don't understand is that companies and prospectors don't actually own the resources that they're looking for. Few people really understand this. The mineral resources that prospectors look for, whether it's gold or critical minerals or anything else, they're actually owned by the people of Nova Scotia collectively, because those rights are retained to the Crown. And that means that we all own them together. You own them, and I own them, and Vanessa owns them, and our children own them. And staking claims and being given rights to explore means that you enter into a contract with the government, where the government leases out the rights to you, but you're still duty-bound to observe all of the laws and respect the environment properly. And in this way, Nova Scotians can all be involved in the exploration for whatever it is that they're looking for. Anyone over the age of majority can stake claims, and they should be able to explore them and be part of the mineral resource sector. And it's a great way for people to get time in the woods, act as an amateur scientist, learn a lot of new science, respect the environment, and meet people with like interests.
You mentioned that there's no working metal mines in Nova Scotia, Ron. Why is that?
Well, for many years, we've had a system in this province where, frankly, between the Department of the Environment and DNR, those two departments have been structured for many years. Politicians were led to believe by the NGOs that are constantly talking to them that people didn't want mining. And it was really the Mining Association of Nova Scotia instituted a couple of polls, and this was really a big deal when it happened. Sean Kirby with the Mining Association took on creating these contracts with research companies to poll the electorate as to how they looked at mining. And a company called Thinkwell Research, which is one of these statistical companies that actually polls the electorate for whatever, they found that support for mining in general in Nova Scotia is 2/3 or better of the electorate, with about 16% opposed. And 6 years ago, in a similar study in Guysborough County, Narrative Research found that support for the Cochrane Hill gold mine was 79%, with 11% opposed. And then yet after that, there was a decision, a clearly politically biased case with respect to a former candidate park area at a place called Lake Archibald, and that stopped the Cochrane Hill gold mine from going forward. And we sent a letter to the new Minister Kim Masland, and we're actually demanding that case be reopened and investigated, because we see you could not pull that off unless you had collusion in executive levels at the Department of Natural Resources and the Department of the Environment, and with director levels as well. So there are a lot of anti-mining activists within government that they're anti-mining bureaucrats. They're buried in DNR and DOE that institute their own agendas. And this is something that the Premier absolutely should be made aware of. These kinds of problems are deep. And when I first started working, I worked for the Department of Natural Resources for the Nova Scotia Geological Survey for 40 years. And when I first started working there, we had 2 executive directors. Today, there are 5. One of the branches was essentially split into 3 branches. And those 3 branches are all consist of people with kind of anti-mining leanings, if you will. And and decisions that come out of those branches have a lot of sway in the decisions that ministers are told to make. But now, because of the polls that Mans did, and the proof essentially that the electorate supports mining and wants mining to be part of its economy, responsible mining, that the politicians now have a problem, and so do the NGOs that don't particularly like mining, because they can't really counter these polls.
Ron, we're almost out of time, but I need to ask the question about uranium and the Premier's decision to stop the moratorium on that, and some of the public blowback on that. Why do you think people are so opposed to it?
Well, exploration back in the 70s, it found several targets that were worthy of follow-up, and there was a kind of a hotbed of anti-uranium development at the time. The whole climate regarding uranium in the 70s and the early 80s was different, and so it was a different time, and that's why uranium is a sore spot with many. But there is still so much very bad messaging going around with respect to uranium. I saw a letter that was written by a professor at St. Mary's, Dr. Erin Adalaka, who is, without question, she is the local expert with respect to uranium. And I mean, I ran uranium projects in northern Saskatchewan for a couple of years, and I believe me, I defer to her experience and knowledge on in this regard. And at Dow just recently, they had some anti-uranium. They had a forum set up where they basically had some people delivering anti-uranium messaging to students, and that sort of thing is still going on. When Nova Scotia had the McLeod inquiry 40 years ago, it was largely taken over by NGOs. The meetings, there were 29 meetings all over the province, and they were largely taken over by NGOs that attended them, and kind of turned the whole thing into a circus. And there was when the inquiry finished, it went to a board of people within the government. I knew one of the people who was actually on that committee, and the actual recommendations with respect to uranium were that the moratorium at the time, which had been in place for 5 years, should be lifted, and it was made permanent instead. Clearly, again, a political decision.
Ron, out of time. I appreciate it, sir. We'll have to do this again.
Yes, okay. I'd love to come back again. Before I leave, I'd like to have a shout out to Todd, and one of my best friends has Parkinson's, and so I watch what he's going through, and it's a very tough it's a tough row to hoe, and Todd has been very gracious and courageous.
Ron, I appreciate it, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good one. That's Ron Mills. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the Salvation Army Kettle Campaign underway. We'll take a look at what that is and what it's raising money for. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Holstrand. Back in minutes. All right, welcome back. It's a sure sign of the Christmas season that is upon us when you go to a local mall, or from my case yesterday, to a local grocery store, and you see the decorations up, you see the gingerbread houses getting ready to get put together. You see the Christmas puddings for sale. You see the Black Friday sales and the Christmas decorations abound. And one of the things that we've seen, and apparently for 135 years, is the Salvation Army's Christmas Kettle Campaign. It's underway. We're very pleased to welcome into the show today Public Relations Officer with the Salvation Army Atlantic Division. That's Wendy Woodland. Wendy, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. I am great. How are you? In the Christmas spirit?
I am, and have been because I was as I mentioned yesterday, at the grocery store, and lo and behold, there was a kettle there, and I made my first donation.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, it's going to help some family in need, and that's the feel-good thing about every person who puts even $1 in that little kettle. Every dollar counts and will affect the work that we can do for the most vulnerable at Christmas time and all year round.
The goal this year for HRM, $375,000. There's a lot of people that need help, right?
Absolutely. We are seeing an increase, not only here in HRM, talking to colleagues in Moncton and St. John as well, the applications that have come in for registration for Christmas help, the numbers are way ahead of where they were last year at this point. So we know that the need is greater. And therefore, if we are going to help every family that has come, or every individual that has come looking for help, then we can't do this by ourselves. We administer the funds, but it is the public who help, the vulnerable people who are living in their community down the street next door. You have no idea what people are going through. And if, people can think about that and realize that just making a small donation can help somebody, I think it's really important that people realize that everybody is feeling the pinch this year.
Wendy, where does the money go and does it stay here?
It stays here. The Christmas Kettle money, or the Kettle Campaign money, I should say, stays in your local community. It helps programs that are going on here all year round, not just Christmas time. Of course, Christmas is a big part of it, the Christmas hampers and the toys, so that children and families do have a beautiful Christmas. But we do have life skills programs and things that happen throughout the entire year. So the Kettle money does help support and fund those programs, but it does stay in the community where it's given.
And it's easy. I can't tell you how easy it was. I don't normally have any cash on me anymore, but you all took care of that.
Well, things have changed, right? Gone are the days when everybody's carrying around a big fat wallet with their bills or their little coin purse,
right?
and you've got a loonie or a toonie. Now, there are some people who still like to have a little cash jingling in their pocket. But for those of us, and I'm one of them, who survive basically with your plastic debit or credit card, we now have, just as you would have in a store, we have a tap option on a lot of the kettles. And it's great. You just, you choose your amount, you can tap, and you will then, as with any other Interact purchase, you will see it in your bank account show up that, yep, you made your donation.
That's how I did it.
It's lovely.
The campaign goes from now until Christmas Eve, correct?
Absolutely. It's in place for a long time. People who are needing assistance register before then. And of course, you can imagine when we are looking at things like, over 4,000 toys going out to children or over 2,500 food hampers going out. It takes a while to organize that. So that cannot be left until Christmas Eve, obviously. So monies that come in early help support those hampers. Monies that come in later in December help support the programs and things that are going on. And of course, we always do end up with people coming in at the very last minute saying, I just lost my job. I don't know what I'm going to do for Christmas. I've got to make this impossible choice. Am I going to buy my medication, for my chronic illness, or am I going to be able to stuff a stocking for my child? Please help. So when those things come, even if it's past our registration date, of course, we step in and help people. So the donations right to the very end is incredibly important.
More information available at salvationarmy.ca. Wendy, appreciate your time today.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Take care.
That is Wendy Woodland, Public Relations Officer with the Salvation Army Atlantic Division. You can't miss them. The big red kettles are out there, and they do make it easy for you to donate. If you don't carry a loonie or a toonie or any money in your pockets, you can do so with the plastic, and it's essentially a tap and you're done, and you're going to help reach the goal of $375,000 for HRM. Time for us to take a break. Blake is going to update us on the goings-on in the news. On the other side of it, we're going to throw open the telephone lines. It's time for the open hour. Couple of things that I'm interested in your thoughts on today. One, Nova Scotia Power CEO is to appear before a legislative committee later today at 1 o'clock. What do you want to hear from Mr. Peter Gregg? And two, speaking of Christmas, had a conversation at the corporate level recently, and there is a movement out there that would suggest that it is inappropriate for you to decorate your office space, your workspace, for the holidays. I'm interested in your thoughts on that, too. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255, the open hour, after the news. Welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. This is the open hour. Normal rules apply, of course. As always, you can talk about whatever it is that is on your mind, but I am curious about a couple of things, if you care to share. And that is one, as you heard in the news, the CEO of Nova Scotia Power is to appear before a legislative committee today. On the agenda to talk about some of these bills that you've been calling us to tell about. Many of you getting a power bill that is out to lunch, out of whack, as I've been saying. What do you want to hear from the CEO of Nova Scotia Power? And I'm not defending him, but he's already apologized. They've already said that they're going to do credit monitoring. They've already said that they're not going to charge interest or late payments, or they are not going to disconnect anybody. Although I will say, and thank you to those that have sent me the emails, that there are some people that that doesn't apply to for whatever reason, and they are currently in collections, and some are concerned that they will get disconnected. I wonder if there was some sort of date or deadline or whatever that was associated with that. But what do you want to hear from Peter Gregg today when he appears before the legislative committee at Province House? As I said off the top of the show today, my experience with these committees is that there can be a lot of bluster, a lot of really raised voices and pointed questions, but at the end of the day, very little happens, right? Might be something you want to talk about. Also had a conversation yesterday, not at the radio station level at all, but talking about the corporate world in general. We have decorated here. I've described it. It's very decorative. It's the way to describe it, I guess. And have for 20 years and will continue to do so. That being said, there are some out there that suggest that the decorations that we put up for the Christmas season may be inappropriate in a workspace. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that as well. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the phones and welcome Gloria to the show. Gloria, how are you?
Hi, Dan. I'm well, and hello to Todd if he's listening. Dan, you remember the song, I think it was, I forget her name now, whether it was Rosemary Cash, I Was a Gold Miner's Daughter?
I think it was a coal miner's daughter, wasn't it?
Oh, well, I was a gold miner's daughter.
Fair enough. Okay.
And my father was a miner. He worked in the mine in Tangier. Excuse me. Where gold was first discovered in Nova Scotia, in Moose River, where the disaster was, in Port Dufferin, in Montague, in Goldenville, and in Timmins, Ontario. And in those days, it was like you're in the armed forces. You travel where the mines were open.
Yep.
unfortunately, Dan, he died from silicosis.
Oh, no.
Which is the disease you get from the fine dust.
Yes.
Fills your lungs. But in those days, there was no protection for miners. You know, they were just down there, and it was a hard job. But I have no problem with mining. I think we have to get back to where we were and do it environmentally.
And that's just it, right, Gloria? Like the way that your father mined and the way that they mine in 2025 are completely different things.
Oh yeah. They're smarter now. They can do it without affecting the environment. And back to the decorating your office.
Yep.
We'll soon get a message that we can't celebrate Christmas anymore.
Well,
you know, I'm getting so tired of this foolishness.
Right.
Don't decorate your office. Don't say Merry Christmas. You might offend somebody. Well, I showed it loud and clear. And if somebody else says Merry Christmas or greetings to me in a different language, that's fine. But I'm going to do what I want to do.
Gloria?
So, and I got my nice light bill yesterday, which is... You pay your light bill every 3 months. I paid mine in September. I get one now for 128 days. How can that be?
Yeah, mine's the same. Yep.
Yeah, crazy.
I don't understand how there would be some kind of science you would think in estimating, right? But I think it doesn't make any sense to me.
And as far as the meeting goes today, nothing will come from that.
There'll be lots of bluster, but that'll be it.
Oh yeah, lots of bluster and lots of stammering and trying to find the answer.
Right.
I know. Okay, thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Gloria. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This is the Open Hour. You can chat about whatever it is on your mind. That's the rules. That's what we do here every day. But I am curious as to your thoughts on what Gloria was just discussing with the CEO of Nova Scotia Power. That's appearing before a committee today. And on Christmas decorations. I had a conversation yesterday about them, and there is a movement out there that suggests that decorating, like we've done for many different years, in many different places, in many different facilities, is something that could be deemed to be inappropriate. And I'm curious to what your thoughts are on that. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Donna to the program. Donna, how are you?
I'm great, and thank you for taking my call. Now, I've got some good news, which is nice, and I kind of wrote it down on a piece of paper, so I'm going to read from the paper so I don't forget anything and ramble.
Okay.
Okay? Now, last week I called and mentioned that a team of 2 grade 8 boys from Goresbrook Junior High won first place in the Nova Scotia Skills Trade Competition at the Discovery Centre on October 28th, where they had to design a solar-powered moving vehicle with speed. This past weekend, the winning team and their teacher, Luke Chalk, won a trip to Skills Canada Nationals and flew to St. John's, Newfoundland for the Nationals at the College of the North Atlantic. There were over 300 students from all across Canada and 50 schools and in 16 different competitions. Our Nova Scotia team and teacher had an incredible experience and arrived back home safely. Well, oh, come on, Donna. Safely to Nova Scotia with another first place finish.
Awesome.
Yep. They had to do another project.
Yep.
They designed and built a wind turbine to produce energy. Smart kids, I could never do it.
Right.
And I just want to say congratulations to these 2 talented, hardworking, and dedicated students, and that all Nova Scotians are very proud of these grade 8 students. And this, by their win at the Nationals, that has put Goresbrook Junior High, Halifax, and Nova Scotia on the map, so to speak. I think it's wonderful. And not a thing in the news.
Well, now it is.
Home,
how's
Sunday
that, Donna? Now it is. We got it out there.
School.
For sure.
That's it.
I appreciate you sharing with us, and congratulations, and job well done.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right, Donna. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The Open Hour continues right after this break. It's the open hour. A few lines open if you want to try and get on. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Quickly, before we go back to the phones, this email from Rob says, if anyone imagines that Nova Scotia Power coming before the provincial committee is going to have any lasting effect as far as improving conditions for Nova Scotia citizens, I have a bridge I'd like to sell you. The entire exercise is performative politics designed to give the illusion that the provincial government is standing up for ratepayers, nothing more. It's hard to argue with that, Rob. It really is. In legislative committees, we've seen, and I'm putting quotes around this, controversial people appear before this before and get grilled by the committee. But at the end of the day, right, as I said to Gloria, lots of bluster, not a lot left over. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go back to the phones. And if I get my buttons correct here, and let's welcome Bob to the show. Bob, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm well. What's on your mind, sir?
Oh, I was just talking about the Halifax explosion, 1927. Boston helped out, sent help for us. But in 1928, the Spanish flu hit, and 50 million people died worldwide, and 50,000 Canadians died. And Boston was hit pretty hard, and they were made a call to the Victoria General Hospital. They needed nurses because the nurses were stressed out of the flu.
Mm-hmm.
So 32 nurses went over there to help out, and 10 nurses, they died of the flu. I think that we've already paid them back for the help that Boston gave us.
So no more Christmas trees where you're getting that?
Well, I'm not saying that, but I don't think the Americans thanked us for us helping them out.
Well, they certainly don't send us a tree every year, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. But like I say, we paid them back, but it's nice to, send the Christmas tree over as a thank you, I suppose. But I just wanted to bring that up, that we actually paid them back.
Well, I appreciate that, Bob. Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Just to correct Bob, before you start emailing me, he said 1927 and 28. That's about 10 years too late, Bob. It was 1917 that the Halifax explosion occurred, and the Spanish flu in Boston was in 1918, just to make sure we get the numbers right. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Cheryl to the show. Cheryl, how are you?
How are you, Dan?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, they call them smart meters, and they're not smart at all right now, and I feel like it was a colossal waste of money. I held off on getting one, and the last reason I got it was because I finally got accepted into the pilot that they offered. And then all of us on the pilot means, you save money 7 months a year. For me, there's two pilots, but the one I'm in or was in, then during, November 1st to the end of March, there's 8 hours a day, excluding weekends and holidays, that your power rates are doubled.
Right.
But the goal is to have you using no power during those eight hours. So they, send me a letter that due to, the breach, that it's being temporarily put on hold. And I said, well, wait a minute. You can estimate, because you're still getting the data. You can still read the data if you come out to my meter, and I'd be more than happy to send it to them. But they said, no, we're suspending it. So I've given them a personal timeline that if I'm not back on the pilot and this is not corrected, that I'm going to get them to remove my smart meter and go back to analog. Because I was sold a bag of tricks that's not tricking anymore.
Right. Right. When we talked to Nova Scotia Power a week or so ago, they said that they were hiring meter readers. I don't think they had a lot left over because of that big switchover, right?
Yeah, they read my meter.
Right.
But the point is that they say that because they can't get the data, that the pilot's suspended, which, doesn't make sense because they can have people read it or they can estimate. I'm fine with estimating. If I overpay or underpay, it'll all work out. I'm fine with that. They're the ones that are using it as an excuse to suspend the pilot. So then I'm using it to get rid of the smart meter if they're going to continue to suspend the pilot, because there doesn't seem to be any end in sight with these smart meters. And all the expense that we, as power consumers, gave them for them to implement these smart meters that some didn't want. And, all the wastage, like, I'm thinking that there was nothing wrong with the old system if the new system is broken. And maybe it's putting us at risk, data-wise, et cetera, because of these new smart meters. Maybe.
At this point, I think everything's on the table, right?
Yeah. And I don't really understand this Christmas debacle. Is it Christmas decorations are offensive in the workplace? What was the angle there?
They really didn't say it was because of religious concerns, and I don't know if they're deeming it as a safety concern because people are plugging stuff in or whatever else, but it just feels very corporate to me, if that makes any sense.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Quite a few people celebrate Christmas that are not religious.
Right.
I mean, it's a beautiful holiday. You can take it and interpret it however you want. It can totally be religious. That's great. Or it cannot be, like the Evergreen Festival. People love trees. They love lights. They love presents. They love gifting to their loved ones. Me having a Christmas tree up, to me, it's hit or miss whether that's actually a religious symbol. I really doubt it at this point. I mean, for some, if you have like Jesus and Mary and Joseph and a big manger, I mean, that's still, to me, not necessarily a religious statement, but I don't agree with them banning it. And, you could have solar lights, I guess, or you could have not solar in the workplace, but I mean, you could have some sort of battery safe operated lights. I really don't think it should be banned, actually.
Cheryl, appreciate the call.
Thanks, bye.
902-405-6000, 780-1-822-55. Email to pass along comes to us from Colin, who writes, "Hey, Dan, like to hear exactly on the issue of Nova Scotia Power, like to hear exactly what the issue is now at this very moment. Did they pay the ransom? Did they not pay the ransom? Do the hackers still have our smart meters locked down? Are certain portions or all portions of the NSP server still under ransom by hackers? How bad is the situation?" He goes on to write, "The other thing I want to know is why NSP holds on to social insurance numbers for so long. PPEDA, which is Canada's privacy law, if I said that wrong, I apologize, says businesses must have a policy to show customers about how and why our private information is gathered when it needs to explain how long it's stored, how it's stored, and then how it is destroyed." And if you're wondering what we're talking about, the CEO of Nova Scotia Power, Peter Gregg, will be appearing before a legislative committee today. The government says it's in response to those estimates that you've been getting on your power bill. I looked at mine the other day, and it was an estimate for well over 100 days. I don't remember the exact number. And I just don't understand the math. It should be pretty easy, you would think, right? Nova Scotia Power, like most companies, lives on paper, right? They have all of this data. So why couldn't they go back 5 years and take a look at the period of your bill and then just average that instead of coming up with a number that, and I don't think I'm alone here, that I don't understand where it came from. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's I would imagine, some pretty smart people that work in those utilities, and the math should be pretty easy. It should be easily explained, I think, is probably the best way to describe it, right? If you look at that bill and you see a number of days, a number of billing days that are attached to your bill, and they put an asterisk by it and say, like, look, we estimated this because we couldn't get access to the smart meters because of the cyber attack, yada, 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 yada. I think that Nova Scotians would probably understand that. But what they're not understanding is some people are getting $1,300 bills. How and is it even possible to use that much electricity in some situations, other than running, I don't know, running a cryptocurrency farm in your basement, which is highly unlikely and hasn't changed. And again, I will reiterate that Nova Scotia Power has told us that they're not going to charge you late fees and not going to charge you any interest or disconnect you because of this situation. Now, as I've said a couple of times, I've received emails from others that have said that's not the case in their situation, and that's got to be tough. I sympathize with you having to deal with that. But in our conversation with Nova Scotia Power a couple of weeks ago, I said, would it make sense to pay what you paid last year over that same period? And the person on the line said yes. So that's what I did. I took a look at what I paid the same period last year. I went back into my bills and looked, and I paid them the same amount that I paid them, which would have been for this bill. And we'll see how that washes out. I'll keep you up to date when I get my next statement. We're going to stop, take a break. The open hour continues on the other side. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. Open hour continues. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phones. And welcome Ann to the show. Ann, how are you?
Oh, fine, thank you. It's a lovely day out there. It's a beautiful morning. But I was going to say that what cheers me up is when I go into those offices and they have the Christmas trees and all the Christmas decorations up. It really cheers me up. And some of them have got them up even earlier this year, which cheers me up further.
Yeah, that's. It seems that the season gets extended every year, right? We're button up right against Remembrance Day now.
Yeah, I think it should start December the 1st, though. Really, but yeah, cool. It should start there. Just keep the seasons that separated from one another. Mm-hmm. And I want to say about Salvation Army. People should really donate to them. My mother's father died in a coal mining accident, and the only people that helped her were the Salvation Army. Right. And then her mother died on childbirth when she was 16. That was many years later. She was only 4 when her father died. And guess who helped? The Salvation Army. So my mother always donated to the Salvation Army because they were the only people that helped. Isn't that funny?
It is. And I appreciate the call.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It's very easy. I did it yesterday. And it only takes probably the time it takes you to reach into your wallet or into your wherever you keep your cards and tap it, and you're done. And it goes to help a lot of people and the money stays local. So let's help them reach their goal. Let's welcome Brian to the show. Brian, how are you?
Good, Dan. How are you today?
I am well. What's on your mind?
I'm the one who called yesterday about living off grid. I appreciate your comments afterwards.
Did they make any sense?
It made perfect sense. It's well said. The reason I'm calling today is efficiency in Nova Scotia. I'm going to make this a chapter. I'll call you every once in a while. Efficiency in Nova Scotia is a provincially run organization, I'm assuming?
I do believe, yes.
Yeah, but the only way you can get rebates from efficiency in Nova Scotia if you're connected to the private utility.
Right. The story goes on, right? Jeez.
Oh, yeah. I have batteries that are on the list. I have an inverter that's on the list. When I called last year and said I have a green home, they said, well, seeing how you're not connected to Nova Scotia Power, you do not qualify.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That just, Brian, every time you call me, I'm astounded.
I won't bother you every day, but I got a 13-book volume.
Very, very quickly, Brian. You mentioned batteries. How many batteries? I'm completely new to these off-grid. How many batteries do you need to have to keep your house running?
I do. I have 6 batteries, 5 kilowatts apiece. That's 30 kilowatts, and that suits me just fine. And
what's the lifespan on them? Do you know? Like how long do they last for?
They're brand new. The batteries are a whole different technology now. They're warranted for 10 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they have a computer, IBS, everything in it. It's a whole different system, and it's plug and play. Everybody could do it.
Appreciate your call. Have a good one.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. If you're curious what Brian's talking about, Brian is a homeowner and has his property is completely off-grid. He has no connection to Nova Scotia Power. He is, I think he said 2 kilometers, maybe it was miles, but 2 kilometers away from the nearest pole. And in order for him to get an occupancy permit to be able to live in his home, Nova Scotia Power had to sign off on that. There are apparently the electrical authority in the province of Nova Scotia. And now we hear that Efficiency Nova Scotia won't give you any rebates unless you're connected to the grid. I don't know how much more efficient you can be than running your own solar grid, are you? Every time he calls, I shake my head. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Tim to the show. Tim, how are you?
Not bad, Dan. How are you doing?
I am well, sir. What's on your mind?
Well, buddy, I tell you, in my opinion, Nova Scotia Power is just legalized extortionists.
Well, that's what monopoly tends to be, right?
I tell you, I had a fire here at my house here probably 5 years ago.
Okay.
And when the power company come out, they cut the wires off my house. But what I didn't realize is they took my meter.
Okay.
And when they took my meter, I never thought no more about it because the insurance company had to get somebody in to rebuild my house, which took November, December, January when they finally figured out who they were going to get in to rebuild my house.
Holy smokes.
3 months, I had no power. The next bill I got from Nova Scotia Power was over $2,900.
Wow.
And I didn't even have hooked to my...
You didn't even have a meter. So how did they even guess that?
Exactly. And I went after them. And I fought and fought and fought. I went to my lawyer, and he said, pay it. You'll pay more in lawyer fees.
Wow.
Yeah. And come to find out, a couple of years later, I was talking to one of the power company guys there, and he said they probably took your meter and put it in another business.
Well, I never even thought about that with a smart meter. How would they know the difference, right?
Exactly. Where that meter was in my name and the number matched me.
And there was nothing you could do about it.
No, and you couldn't prove it because when I rebuilt it, just put another meter into it, and away I went.
Holy smokes, Tim.
That's my little story, bud.
Wow.
Just legalized extortion is all they are.
Tim, I appreciate you sharing with us.
Have a good day.
All right, man. Cheers. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I don't mean to laugh, but it's the stories that you're bringing to me about the utility that is responsible for power for most of us in the province. It just is mind-boggling. How could you possibly use any electricity if the power company came to your house, cut the wires from your house, and took your meter? How does that work? Wow. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Steve to the show. Steve, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind?
I thought I'd share a different slant on Scotia Power, George, to you, you know.
Yep.
I got my recent bill, and it's from August 12th to October the 9th. They have two readings on it, an old reading and a new reading. And when they calculated it all out, they owe me $73.75 credit.
So they made it good, right? Is that what they did?
They made it good for me. Yeah,
okay.
And it says, please do not pay this credit balance, yes.
Right.
And the other thing, I got a letter from Nova Scotia Power, and on it it says, we have no evidence of misuse of your personal information.
Really?
Yes.
Because I thought it was everybody.
Pardon me?
I thought it was everybody.
No, not me. I'm looking right at the paper, reading it to you.
Well, there you go. So you're one of the lucky ones then.
Yeah. That's what I said. I put a different slant on.
For sure.
Nova Scotia Power, Nova Scotia Power taking off beating right now.
Yeah, it is. So, so just to be clear, Steve, you paid your bill and then you got a new bill and they made it good because you overpaid on the last. Am I correct?
Well, from the last one, yes.
Yes. Okay.
$73.75. They said amount due November the 10th, 2025, is a credit of $73.75. Right. Do not pay this amount. And then the other one, like I said, I got a different letter saying none of my information was compromised.
Huh.
And they made arrangements to have me with Global Credit Reporting Agency.
Right.
I guess they did that with everybody, right, for 5 years. Subscription, no charge. Yeah.
All right.
So I thought I had put out some good news.
Fair enough, Steve.
while everybody's beating up on Nova Scotia Power.
There you go.
I'm happy to get this information myself. So.
Well, it's good to hear that when they say they're going to make good, that there are some instances where they're making it good. Steve, I appreciate you sharing with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the way that I assumed that it was going to work. I think I described what I did with my power bill before the break. And that's how I assumed it would roll out, but it's still bizarro how this estimating thing has happened, and there, quite frankly, some people out there can't afford to pay the estimate that they were handed. So I certainly can understand that as well. We're going to take our next break. Quickly before we go, I want to send a shout out from me to listener Mike, who stopped by the radio station yesterday and dropped me off a T-shirt. He said he spotted it when he was out shopping, and it was with one of my favorite rock and roll bands on it, and said, when I saw that, I thought of Dan, so I brought you a shirt, and I appreciate that. Thanks, Mike. We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. Open hour continues here. Some lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. We're talking a couple of things today. The Nova Scotia Power CEO is to appear before a legislative committee today. That's happening. It begins, I believe, at 1 o'clock. And you can catch that if you want to watch it. You can catch it on the Nova Scotia Legislative TV network. It's a streaming service that you can grab off of the provincial government's website, and you can watch it for yourself and formulate your own opinion of what's happening there and if anything's being accomplished. I did ask the question earlier today, what would you like to hear from Peter Craig as he makes that appearance before this legislative committee? Nova Scotia Power has, let's just say, has had a year, right? We've had the cyber attack. Many of you, including myself, not happy with the way that that was handled. And then we had that cyber attack rolled into a problem with the smart meters and a billing cycle, and now we're getting estimated bills that are quite frankly out to lunch, at least in some cases. I'll use mine as an example. And then we're hearing just all the stories from Nova Scotia Power. It's truly amazing. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's grab a couple more calls before we run out of time here, and we will welcome Kevin to the show. Kevin, how are you?
Dan the man, how you doing, buddy?
I am well. What's on your mind?
I came in late on your conversation, and it perked my interest. So what are they saying now? About Christmas decorations.
Well, no, it was a conversation I was having with people out there in the corporate world who are saying that there's a movement out there that having decorations in the workplace is inappropriate.
Come on.
I mean, we've been doing it forever, right?
Right. Listen, I'm 63 years old. There was never a problem like this years ago. Why all of a sudden? I can tell you the reason why. but I'm not going to say it on the air.
Okay.
It has to do with a difference of faith. It has difference. There's
but you see,
a little bit of.
And then Kevin, I don't want to cut you off or anything, but it wasn't that's not where the conversation was kind of centered on. It was it wasn't just Christmas decorations. It was decorations as a whole, right?
Okay, really?
Yeah.
You know, they can find better stuff to complain about than stuff like that. Really, you know, Christmas decorations and things like that. I mean, can't they find anything better to talk about and complain about?
Well, that's just it, right? There's enough things on the world that we should be focusing on to solve the world's problems, rather than if plugging in a set of lights is a bad thing.
Yeah, and it's like the whole Merry Christmas controversy. Some people don't think we should be saying it. And it's a lot of foolishness. I mean, people are worried about too much foolishness these days, you know?
Right.
That's what I think, anyway. I think a lot of this stuff is to complain for the sake of complaining.
You're not wrong, Kevin, and you're absolutely not wrong. I think that people have become accustomed to it.
Well, it's the world we live in today. Everybody's got a complaint.
Well, if everybody didn't complain, it would be a pretty boring open hour, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but like I said before, that it's about a lot of stuff they shouldn't be complaining about. Right. You know, I mean, you've got to keep traditions. You've got to have every society has to have traditions, because traditions are a part of what makes a society function.
Right.
A big part. And when you start complaining and taking away traditions and things, and you know, what you're doing is you're changing society.
Kevin, I appreciate your call.
You have a good day, sir.
You too. 902-405-6000, 1-877-780-8255. We go to Byron. Byron, how are you?
Not bad. Yourself?
I'm well, sir. What's on your mind?
Remembrance Day, the poppy thing with the courtrooms.
Yep.
I mean, Mr. Houston, he got a mega majority right now, so he could put that in the Remembrance Day Act, say from October 15th to November 12th. You can wear a poppy wherever you want.
Yeah,
unless it's a safety issue.
And he certainly did threaten that, but after that one post, I haven't heard much else.
No, and same as Remembrance Day, it should be a state holiday in Nova Scotia.
Absolutely should be.
It's one in New Brunswick, it's one in PEI, but it's not here in Nova Scotia. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Should be right across the country, never mind just here.
Yes, it should be, but it's a provincial thing, so it's the province that has to make it a state holiday.
Right.
So, I mean, and as far as Nova Scotia Power goes, well, they got them a monopoly. What are we going to do? They hold us hostage.
Well, that's what, yeah, I mean, and that's what monopolies do, right? That's how they exist.
But why couldn't somebody with green energy come in, build a station, and use their power lines? Same as Bell, you know, or MT&T. They started out the phone lines, but people use them.
Yeah.
So why couldn't they be regulated that, okay, now you got to share your lines? Yeah, we got to pay you for it, cost of it, but why couldn't somebody do that?
Well,
I mean, there's answers out there.
I think that's kind of what the Premier has proposed with his Wind West plan, right? That wouldn't be run by Nova Scotia Power. So it would be another company.
Sure?
Well, at this point, maybe, you never know. I mean, 20 years is a long time, right? Anyway,
yeah, that's right.
I appreciate it, Brian. Have a good one.
Okay.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Distribution has always been the issue, right? And I think Byron might be onto something there, that, you know, we're starting to create this distribution company. I think that's the first stepping stone on the Premier's offshore wind plan that has been proposing. But, you know, if Nova Scotia Power or Emera, its parent company, own the lines, then they could make it extremely expensive to rent them, right? Unless there was legislation like Byron had suggested. But I think it's just the startup cost, and B, the some of the regulation that's attached with starting a new power generating facility in Nova Scotia. We've seen people try it in Fundy a lot, right? With tidal power, and both at least the two that I'm familiar with have both failed. So I think there's the startup cost is certainly is a problem. So welcome Paulette to the show. Paulette, how are you?
Hi, good. I've got months and months and months of they didn't read my meter. Anyway, what I'm scared of, right, they took all our information, my information. I know people who got really bad power bills.
Right.
And they got all our information. Now, they haven't been reading the meters, right? Okay, who's saying when they did the cyber attack, I think that's what you call it, who's saying they didn't mess with the meters too? Because why can't they read the meters? So that's telling me, to me, that they not only took our information, they somehow messed with the meters too, because why couldn't they read them?
That's a fair question, Paulette, and I'm not sure how the technology works, but if it's digital, it certainly can be hacked, right?
That's right. And another thing, like I like the old meters. I mean, I moved from Martins Point, right? Mm-hmm. And me and I had electricity for my water, which I used a lot, and I'd use my dryer and everything, and it just seems like I don't know. I don't like those new meters.
Yeah, I hear you,
I really don't. Okay, well, that's all. Maybe somebody will tell us.
Let's hope.
If that's the question. Well, did they? I think they must have did the meters too, because why else wouldn't they read them?
That's a fair question, Paulette. I appreciate you joining us.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good
Bye.
one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I don't know the inner workings. I don't know the mechanics. I don't know the electronics of the smart meter. But if, my limited experience with things that are connected to internets and wireless is that kind of stuff can be hacked. I don't know to what end the hacker would benefit from increasing our rates other than it costing us more money. I don't think that who knows? Paulette raises a great point. Maybe it's something that the CEO will answer today when he takes the stand in about an hour's time. I'll be watching, and I know many of you will be watching as well, and I'm interested to see what Peter Gregg has to say, and we can certainly talk about that on the program here tomorrow. Thank you to all of you who picked up the phone, dialed the numbers, and joined the conversation. I appreciate it. We're going to take a break for the news, get an update, and when we come back, we're going to switch gears a little bit. It's time for Science Files. Dr. Rob Thacker is here to answer your science question, and I look forward to it, and I hope that you get your calls in early so that you're not disappointed. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files. After the break. Welcome back. It's time for Science Files. The lines are open, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I'm Dan Olstrand. He, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University down there was it the West End or the South End? Somewhere South End of Halifax, and he is here to answer your science-related questions. He just answered mine. It was a directional question as opposed to science. And
a portable compass, just a big one.
There you go. And that's why we have him here. Yeah. He gets you want the answers. Yeah. Dr. Rob will do his very best to try and answer them for you here on the program. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Before we go to the phones, Dr. Rob, Media Day earlier this week on Artemis 2, and the crew that is going to crew that mission.
To the one who's going to loop around?
The loopy crew.
Yeah.
And of course, Canadians watching this one very closely because Jeremy Hansen is from the Canadian Space Agency and will be a part of that Artemis crew. Now, he's not on the crew that will actually land on the moon. He's doing the orbit around it, correct?
That's right. So he's going to be the first Canadian to go past the moon, as it were. So I would imagine that's... it's a thrill to do that, but to not sort of look out the window and go, "Oh, I wish I was down there."
Right,
it's going to be
golf club and everything with ready to
go. In the golf club, what does everyone remember the golf club? Seriously, it's like
it's kind of
I'm in this
picture.
Giant bunker called the moon.
Yes,
and I'm still in the bunker. No, so he's going to be flying around. I mean, it's one of the easier missions within Artemis, I would say, right? Because you're literally, precisely which trajectory you're on. You're going to loop around the moon, come back again. It's not like the proposed landing mission where they're still figuring out the details, quite frankly. And I mean, you've probably seen the little spat between Elon Musk and the current NASA director about the probability that SpaceX will be on time, which actually, to be fair, doesn't look good at the moment. But Artemis 3 will be a lot more complicated than Artemis 2. So I think Artemis 2, this is reasonable to think it's going to run reasonable.
Why is it, Rob, that we haven't put boots, at least North American boots, on the moon since like 1972?
Yeah, but funnily enough, I think the average person on the street can answer this one pretty quickly as well, because you say, why would you? Right? And the honest fact of the matter is, it's one thing to actually go and do something in what was a Cold War race, let's face it. And it's another thing to go back to the moon and actually start doing useful, I'll just say, science and engineering back on the moon. I mean, there's not that much really that we can do. And people say, oh, mining, blah, 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 blah. It's hard to get stuff back to the Earth. Right, I keep pointing this out. People say, "Oh, can't we bring these precious metals back?" And it's like, no, it's not easily done. You have to break, get all of the energy out of the spacecraft when it comes back to the Earth, and doing all of that is actually quite difficult. So I keep pointing out, mining in space is about mining resources for people who are up in space. It's rarely going to be about bringing back to the Earth because that just takes too much energy.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So until, and to use the mining example, until we're able to get big rocks and break them down into little rocks and extract the actual mineral that we're looking for, and that's a long process. You have to build facilities and all that stuff.
So if you're going to do all of that, then yes, you've got to have facilities to do it. But then B, you're limiting yourself to the precious metals, basically.
Right.
And so, funnily enough, I mean, you look at gold. We've got incredibly good at recycling gold, right? We're not. Well, we are still mining gold, but we don't have to. We can recycle a lot of it right now.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. An email question comes to us from Colin. It says, hello. This may be a stupid question, but here goes nothing.
No.
There are no such thing as stupid questions. Yeah. Earth has an axis, and well, it has lots of axis, but it has an axis and rotates around that axis. But why? Being a spherical shape, couldn't there be an axis at any point to rotate around? Okay. And what determines the 23-degree tilt of the planet, and why is it where it is?
Oh, so one of those is harder than the others. But let's start with the rotation axis and where that comes from. So when we're actually forming planets, they're forming within a disk of material that's rotating around the star that they're forming around. So we see this all the time, lots of observations. This is very well understood. And then once you start having things collapsing down under their own gravity within that disk, then inevitably they will tend to pick up the rotation associated with that disk. So then you see most of the things will wind up with spin alignments that look similar, right? But if you have collisions of things that are much bigger, right, then you can actually have situations when they get knocked off the particular preferred rotation axis. And so what's happened with the Earth, we think, over time, is the Earth actually underwent a collision with something that was basically kind of in the plane of the solar system. So it didn't knock it far off, but it knocked the Earth's rotation off far enough that we now have this 23-degree tilt, which is actually why we have the seasons and everything. So it does produce some really interesting results on the Earth because of that tilt. So that generally is the argument we give. You can still be knocked off axis, like Uranus is far off axis and so on. But most of the time you expect them to be essentially spinning roughly similar direction to the overall orientation of the disk that they're in, right? But so what was the last bit? I'm trying to remember.
Why is it rotate around the axis?
Yeah.
Why does it have an axis? And couldn't the axis be at any point on the Earth as opposed to where it is?
So yes, it could be. But I mean, what you have to remember is that if we had a rotation that was tilted over, say, like Uranus, then the poles wouldn't be where they are now, right? We would have a band sort of like starting around the equator and then going to the other side, where it would be much colder and it would be nighttime all the time. Right, so yes, you can have different orientations, and in fact, Venus has a completely upside down orientation, which is pretty weird, right? But at the end of the day, whatever orientation you have for those, for where the spin axis is, you're going to have the consequences of that as well. right? And so the classic example would be just having like day and night time with it spinning, pointing towards the sun. That would be very different.
You mentioned that the 23-degree tilt was a result of perhaps a collision or something that knocked it off. Must have been a pretty significant collision to move it, right?
So I mean that is part of the moon formation scenario, right? So you form we perhaps don't realize, but the moon is an absolutely huge moon comparatively speaking to the size of the Earth, right? We often forget about that. And so the formation of the moon is, as far as we can tell, the best scenario that we have for explaining it was you have a proto-Earth, you have something come in around about Mars size, and then whack, huge amount of energy goes into that collision. The material is spewed off into a roughly ring-type system for a while. That starts collapsing down to form the moon, and then long-term, you wind up with the Earth and the moon rotating. So the moon's rotating at about 7 degrees off axis relative to the rest of the solar system, the plane of the ecliptic.
And very quickly, before we go to the phones, we've got another email question that's based on the moon, and it says, hey, Dr. Rob, it's been a talk of a space elevator to the moon for the last decade or so, and it's believed to be doable and cheap. What have you heard about it?
Yeah, so, okay, let's talk about what a space elevator is. And this is kind of like a freaky physics thing, which actually does work. And so I think Arthur C. Clarke was one of the first people to talk about this at length. And so what the idea of a space elevator is, you can literally have a very, very long, I'll call it tether, right, where the top of the tether is literally in orbit, right? And you can put enough strain in the system that system is completely in an equilibrium state. You can make things go up and down on it. The top isn't going to go anywhere as long as it's in the appropriate orbital position. The challenge with the building one on the Earth is the top of it has to be a long way away, right? And we don't have any material that's strong enough to actually survive the stress that would be in the tether, right? People actually do whole workshops trying to come up with stronger and stronger materials to actually build something like this. Personally, I think it would be stupid to build, because if you had anything go wrong, the problem you have is that you'll end up with this tether wrapping around the Earth, right? Which is not a good look.
No.
Right? So I don't think they're going to get built on the Earth. Now, if you have a lower gravitational field, you don't need a material that's as strong, and you can get things up into orbit and fire them off much more easily. And so there's been talk about doing it on the moon for some time, and we literally have materials that are strong enough to do it on the moon. What is probably the most interesting, though, is actually doing it on Mars, right? Because Mars is a really good place to build craft that you want to go to the rest of the solar system. It's that much further away from the sun, and it has that much less gravity. So we could, in theory, build a space elevator on Mars, and that, wouldn't be a bad idea.
Where would it go? Like, would it go to the next planet?
No, it just goes into orbit, right? So the
gets it off of
the tether. You ride all the way up, and then you're basically in orbit.
Right. So you don't need to have a rocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
you can get rid of the need of having rocket engines to get you all the way up there, and then you just launch with whatever smaller engine you need there.
Which is weight economy and fuel economy, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Science Files continues right after this break. All right, welcome back. This is Science Files. He is Dr. Rob Thacker. He's here to answer your questions. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get a phone call. John, welcome to the show. John, are you there?
Hi. Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Absolutely. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
Good. Yeah, this is much more down to earth. I live on a road that's gravel that gets graded periodically, and it's really it's just recently been graded again. The most amazing thing is that it develops a series of potholes along the road. It gets graded, and of course the potholes are filled up. But every time after the next rain, the potholes come back in precisely the same place. I don't mean nearly the same place. I mean exactly the same place.
Yeah.
Almost within centimeters.
Yeah.
So if the road has been graded and the potholes have been filled in, why on earth are they coming back in exactly the same place?
I'm pretty much convinced, and you probably have to talk to an engineer about this, but I'm pretty much convinced that's all down to drainage. right? And so even though you fill it in, right, you've got areas on the roadway that are going to be able to drain better than other areas. And so in this particular case, what's probably happening is that you've got particular regions where the water just doesn't drain effectively, and so everything pools there, and all the traffic going through with that additional water there just squishes the material out, and lo and behold, you get the pothole in exactly the same place again.
Okay, well, thanks for the explanation. I know Nova Scotians are fascinated with potholes, so I thought...
There's absolutely no doubt about that. Appreciate it, John.
Yeah, I mean...
you.
In a funny kind of way, I think that potholes are the sort of like inverse problem of sinkholes, where that's actually where you've got stuff that's too porous.
Right.
Right. And then, whoa, things start disappearing, right? Which is pretty scary. Whereas with potholes, the water's just staying there. So, yeah.
It's and particularly in the gravel situation, on asphalt situation, there's a number of different factors, right? There's plowing, there's all these other things that happen. But when you get potholes in the middle of summer, when there's no plows on the road, then it has to. You have to look to Mother Nature, I think. You never win the battle,
no,
right?
No, seriously. I mean, so this is one of the things that we should... I mean, when people build roads, I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's such an effort to build a good road, right? Because you've got to have all of the layers set to make sure the drainage is even and so on beneath the road layer itself and things like that. So there's a lot of things that go into making a good road for sure.
And it takes different levels of aggregate and everything else to build up the bed, right? It's not just it's not there by happenstance.
Yeah.
902-405-6000 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Ron.
Hi, how are you guys doing? This is a kind of an out there question, but do you remember over a year ago all those drones flying over New Jersey, and there was a lot of them, and people couldn't figure out what they were. Have you ever heard anything about that?
I do remember that. I thought the answer to that is that they had the authorities look into it and they couldn't find anything particularly unusual at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's funny that happened and then all of a sudden nothing.
Yeah, I know that people were sort of concerned about whether it was foreign actors and so on, but I thought that they just decided it was a bunch of companies that just happened to have doing things at a similar time, basically, at the end of the day.
Okay. Another question. This is a UFO question.
Well, you know my attitude about those. Okay, go ahead.
There's a guy on Bill Maher there a few weeks ago. He wrote a book, and he's on it talking about it. And apparently people are seeing these things again, and they kind of appear in the sky, and they're unusual, but they all of a sudden then they just disappear, like they're gone. Like he says, like 1,000 miles an hour, they just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bill Maher was there, and he was. I was kind of. I thought that was kind of odd that he knew about what he was talking about, not because of the book. He just knew, and so then he asked him. He said, different theories about what they were all about, and this and that. Then he said they also travel in the ocean, and the guy said, yeah, that's true. That they go in the ocean and they all over the ocean, and they travel at enormous speeds, right? And have you heard anything about this?
Well, I'm just going to be honest with you. I mean, it's so difficult to move at high speed through water because you need so much energy to displace the water. It's just really hard to do. Right. And so, I mean, it's when things go wrong at high speed in water, they really, really go wrong. Right. Whereas in the air, things only go wrong when you hit the ground.
So the definition, thanks for the call, Ron, the definition of UFO is an identified flying object, right? Not necessarily alien object.
Well, yeah. So, okay, let's back it up. I mean, so anything that you see in the night that you can't give an absolute identification to is unidentified, right? And so for most astronomers, right, who spend a lot of time looking at the night sky, are there things that we look up and we see and we go, oh, I'm not quite sure what that is? Yeah, it happens, right? So it doesn't happen very often, though, right? And so that's the thing that you should be paying attention to. Like, and no disrespect to people on the street who are observant and so on, and that's great. And be more observant. That's awesome. But unless you are talking to someone who is used to looking at the night sky and seeing what happens in the night sky all the time, right, it's very difficult to take an observation as a credible thing, right? So what do we see more and more of now? satellites coming down. Right? This is becoming a regular thing, right? So now people are calling in saying, oh, I saw this thing last night, what was going on, and so on. And you can literally tell, how fast was it moving across the sky? Like, did it take like 20 seconds to move across the sky? Or was it like a zip, 2 or 3 seconds across the sky? And if it's 2 or 3 seconds, well, you know that's moving pretty darn fast. So it's probably a meteor. Whereas if it's moving slower, it's probably coming from Earth orbit, and it's going to burn up, create this big old trail, and you'll see it. Right, and there's more and more of those today because there's more and more satellites in the sky.
And before somebody calls and asks, I'll ask the question.
Okay.
It was interesting to me to see scientists from NASA coming onto the world's media to dispel the Three-Eye Atlas theory.
Well, what are you going to do? I mean, you've got a press conference waiting for you right there, haven't you? If you just want to do that as NASA, so. Yeah, it's. I don't know what to say. I mean, this is the function of an information system that's more focused on interaction than it is on getting to the details of the truth. Right? I mean, let's
just kind of weird though that it has, you know, Three-Eye Atlas. How many calls have we taken on Three-Eye Atlas?
Yep.
That NASA found it necessary to have one of their lead guys go onto a press conference and say like we looked at this and it's not alien.
That's because if you look, okay, let me pick my favorite hobby horse to beat on, right? You go on YouTube, right? You type Three-Eye Atlas in. What will be the things you see that are top of the list? And they won't be, oh, astronomer does interview about Three-Eye Atlas. It will be Three-Eye Atlas. Could it be from another alien civilization, right? There will be a stream of those things, right? And they're put together very well. I congratulate all of the content creators who do these things. They know how to pull your strings and press your buttons. They are very good at it. And that's why people engage with it, because you can, and you can be entertained. Right. Whereas, is it sort of like the way that we're eventually going to find out about alien civilizations? I think the honest answer to that has to be no. And there's going to be a lot more of these things coming. Now we have the Rubin telescope operating in Chile. We're going to be finding a lot more of these over the next few years. Guarantee you that.
Content for the show, Rob. Content for the show.
Yeah. No, I can't. This is my thing. Like, the world is incredible.
Right.
Right. It is incredible as it is. If you just have a little sort of like curiosity about why things are the way they are. Okay. But yeah.
We're going to take a break. Science Files continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. He is Dr. Rob Thacker, and we're back after the news. Science Files continues here. If you have a science-related question, Dr. Rob Thacker is here to try and answer it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go to the phones, Rob. We welcome Rafe to the show. Rafe, how are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Well, I just heard on one of the news reports, I think it was your station or CBC this morning, that Premier Houston is planning on putting a 50-some wind turbine farm to produce electricity or produce power to manufacture ammonia and hydrogen. Is that correct?
No, that's the Member 2 First Nation that's putting in a wind farm that they've got for. But yes, that's what they're going to use it for, is for those two processes.
So my question is, what is ammonia? I mean, I can understand hydrogen if you want to power cars and stuff, but why are we producing ammonia? What's the use?
It's literally a good way to transport the hydrogen, right? Because you have it in a liquid form, you can get higher density because of that, and then you can transport it. But it takes energy to do that. This is one of the things, sorry, I'm not a huge fan of hydrogen. I don't think anyone is surprised by that on the show. I can see some useful parts of it, like particularly steel industry, right? I can see hydrogen playing a big role in the steel industry down the line. But overall, this idea that we would just use all of the wind resources to make hydrogen and ship it around and so on, it just doesn't travel well, right? It's very, very light if it's in a gas phase. If you pipe it through pipelines, if you're then not made of the right steel, it will embrittle the steel. So there are limits to what you can do in putting it through the various pipelines we have. So it's just not a great thing to move around, right? And that's one of the issues with the hydrogen. It's just energy density unless you turn it into some compressed form, and then that takes energy as well, right? So yeah.
Well, my thought was if we're going to put in 50-some turbines producing 4.3 gigawatts or whatever of power, why would we not use that on the electric grid for people's homes? And is this like a money-making thing? I mean, if we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars putting up a plant. Why are we not using that for people? For the power grid?
Completely.
Bring our power bills down.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're in a situation where you have a big resource, then is it not better to fix your need for renewables first and then worry about the hydrogen after that? And so, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. But the challenge, and what you got to remember in all of this is, it's the actual subsidies that make it economically viable to produce the hydrogen in the first place, right? And so in the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, right, to give you an idea why they're pumping all of this money in. They're pumping all of this money in so they build better and better electrolysis system. Literally, you split water to get hydrogen and oxygen, right? And so you want better and better efficiencies for that. But then once you've been paid to produce that stuff, right, there's literally a line in the Inflation Reduction Act that says you can't now then burn that hydrogen you've produced.
Okay. Here's my last. I don't want to take up any more time, but here's my last question then. How is hydrogen used to produce steel?
So
what's the process?
So it's just the heat source that you need, right? So you're going to burn it to produce the heat source that's melting the steel for all the production and basically all the tampering that you need to do, etc.
So instead of using a coal furnace or whatever, you use a hydrogen furnace. Hey, Rafe, I appreciate the call. By the way, for those of you that are wondering what we're talking about, wind project in Guysborough County involving Membertou First Nation has passed the environmental review stage. Nova Scotia government says it has approved the environmental assessment for the, and my Mi'kmaq is terrible, Sepuktuk wind project owned by Everwind Nova Scotia Holdings in partnership with Membertou Development Corporation. The project set to begin construction in late 2026, expected to generate 432 megawatts of electricity from 54 wind turbines that will be about 122 meters long. Electricity from the wind will eventually be used to power Everwind's green hydrogen and ammonia facility in Point Tupper, which of course is here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah. I mean, so Michael Liebrecht in the UK is probably the world's greatest critic of hydrogen. Right, and so he has something that he calls the hydrogen ladder, which actually I should say it's not his idea. He's just been modifying that. And so it goes through the list of all of the things where hydrogen can make a difference or is expected to make a difference. So what's the thing that stands out and is most obvious? Well, it might not be most obvious to everyone, but fertilizers, right? You need a lot of hydrogen to create fertilizers, right? So that's going to be somewhere where it makes a real difference. But at the end of the day, it's not easy or it's not cheap from an energy perspective to actually go out and make hydrogen, right? Especially when you need more renewables, right?
And to use ammonia has some environmental concerns too, doesn't it?
Well, as far as I know, when you're just really putting the ammonia into that form to ship it, right? And then once you've got it down the other end, you'll do something else with it. But no, I just don't get this. And so a lot of people have said, like, this idea that Germany would buy lots of hydrogen, right? Well, okay, right, I can see how Germany was thinking about it. But as far as I know, they're now thinking, maybe that's not going to work now, right? Because you need to be able to stabilize the price. And there's no guarantee that once all of the subsidies are finished, that we actually will have the cheap price that people are hoping for, however many dollars a kilo it is, right? So, yeah, I don't know what to say. I think there's been a lot of... there's a lot less talk about hydrogen now than there was a year ago, 18 months ago. I will say that.
902-405. Thanks, Rafe. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. By coincidence, same news story. It says that an energy company in Newfoundland and Labrador is revising its plan to build a wind-powered ammonia plant in Newfoundland. A spokesperson said the company is getting ready for a new environmental assessment for the wind-only project that would deliver power to Newfoundland and Labrador. So they've seen exactly what Rafe was talking about, that it might be more beneficial to their local community to use those megawatts of electricity to light homes and heat homes rather than to deal with nitrogen.
The real problem with
hydrogen,
wind is storing the energy, right? So this is something that we don't have a good solution for, right? Let's face it. I mean, we can build batteries and so on, but we still don't have a really cheap way of building really, really big batteries. There are lots of projects in the US based upon very simple battery technologies using things like carbon, aluminum, and so on, which are very abundant, but they haven't really produced the high-density storage that you really need, right? So something where you literally use the excess energy to do something like pumping water up and then letting it go when you need it, that kind of solution is good, but they're huge civil engineering projects, right, to actually be able to use basically water to just flow out, give you the energy when you need it. And so I don't know. This is the big challenge with renewables, just being able to store the energy and get it when you need it.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Of course, back to the space world. We saw a suborbital launch from Nova Scotia last week. Rob, did you follow that and see what was happening out there at Maritime Launch?
I actually didn't, if I'm completely honest. I mean, I saw that it lifted off, but that was about all that I heard about it. I mean, a suborbital launch, at the end of the day, happens pretty much fairly regularly, and so. I will say I'm sure MLS is happy to actually have that done, right? And so presumably they went past the Kármán line and everything. But no, at the end of the day, I'm sure they'd like to actually have an orbital launch, right, to claim that. So, yeah, I don't actually have a whole lot to say about it. And that sort of probably is a fair statement of what most people in the space community are thinking about it right now.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after this break. Okay, welcome back. A couple of calls. We'll try to get to as many as we can here on the program. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. He is Dr. Rob Thacker. This is Science Files. And on the phone is Al. Al, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Your question, please.
Yes, you were talking earlier about moving minerals from outer space back to Earth, that the problem was waste, and that most minerals would be refined or milled on the planet itself. But if you milled all these materials on a planet and then created a spaceship out of those materials, would that solve any problem?
So, okay, I'll preface everything by, if you can bring things back to the Earth close to neutral cost, right, then your economics are fine. All of this is about cost at the end of the day, right? And so the challenge we have is that it's expensive to launch, and then it's expensive to bring something back as well, right? And so when you come back from the moon, for example, the way we do things at the moment is to literally get rid of all of the energy associated with falling back to the Earth through burning through the atmosphere at a very high rate and braking, right? So that braking process limits what you consider or can consider bringing back down. Right? People say, what about going into low Earth orbit and things like that? That's much slower, right? Much slower than coming in from something like the moon. And so, yes, if you can build a rocket very, very cheaply, send it back to the Earth, decelerate that rocket using its own power, and then come back through the atmosphere, then sure, you could make the economics viable. But at the moment, we can't do that.
Oh, okay. So if that problem was solved, that weight problem would be eliminated by creating a rocket.
Yeah, I mean, if you have advanced rocketry, then you can solve that problem. It's just that our rocketry right now, I wouldn't say for re-entry at least from a moon mission, is particularly advanced.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate it. It's hard enough to stop stuff coming in now, never mind adding, tens of thousands.
Yeah, well,
of pounds
so what people have done is they sort of turn around and say, well, could we put like a massive heat shield on a lump and throw that through the atmosphere? And yes, you could. Right, but what have you just created? You've created like a 10-ton
missile.
Yeah, it's like a serious piece of material, asteroid coming back down to the Earth. Right, even if it doesn't land on land, it's going to land in an ocean, create a tsunami somewhere. So I just don't get it. It's just really hard to do this effectively with the technology we have right now. I mean, think about what came back from the moon. Right, it was really a couple of astronauts came back from the moon. Right, most of the rest of it is still back there. Right,
and some rocks and little bit of dust.
Yeah, well.
And a golf club, apparently.
We do have 400 pounds of boon rocks. That's true.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Again, thanks for the call, Al. Let's welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure, your question, please.
It's kind of a multi-stage question. So if Betelgeuse and Antares are so much bigger than the sun, do we feel any energy from them at all, or are they just too far away that we would feel anything from them? And when they do actually supernova, will they affect us in any way, or will they like send huge rocks hurling through the sky, or?
So the answer to that, so do they affect us in any way? And I think the answer to that is yes, they do, but not in the way that you might be thinking, right? And so the fact that you can see something means it's actually affecting you, right? So I love pointing out the fact to people that when they look through our telescope at SMU and they see a very, very, very distant thing, like the most distant thing we can show people is like close to 1 billion light years away. It just looks like a point. They can barely see it and so on. But I point out to them that you got to realize that light took 1 billion years of traveling through the depths of space to end its journey in this telescope on this planet and then in your eyeball, which is pretty freaking incredible, right? And
That's
so
it is.
with Betelgeuse and Antares, I mean, they're huge, and yeah, you can look up and you can see them, right? So they are affecting you primarily through that light that you're going to get. Now, that's not really what you're asking. So you're really asking, are they going to impact the Earth significantly? And there might be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years afterwards, a very, very small amount of material that gets scattered over very, very large distances, right, with all of the explosive winds and so on. But are we going to worry about that? No, right? It's going to be very bright. It will be bright enough to see during the day. And in fact, I have so many of my colleagues who would be upset that they can't see galaxies because Betelgeuse is so bright for those period of months, right? It's probably about 18 months that it's really going to mess up looking at very faint galaxies. But otherwise, we don't have too much to worry about. They're far enough away.
Okay. Which one's going to supernova first? Do we even know?
So I don't know what the estimates are on Antares. So Betelgeuse, the most recent estimates I've seen is it's like within 100,000 years maybe. But, you know, it's pretty imprecise, right? It could go whenever, but most people think probably like 100,000 years, something like that.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
All right, Mike.
Thank you.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Not in our lifetime.
Yeah, I really don't see that. It would be amazing. I mean, we are actually overdue for a supernova in our own galaxy. It's been hundreds of years since we had one that was bright enough to be able to see during the daytime or anything like that. And it's kind of interesting that we had 2 or 3 a few hundred years ago, but we're in a bit of a supernova desert right now.
Well, and they also could be, as you were mentioning, the time that light takes to travel. It could already have.
Well, it could have happened. Yes, it could have happened. Yeah, that's always a possibility when you're like 400 light years away, right? But I tend to think about it in terms of the only time frame that really matters is our one here.
There you go. The time-space continuum.
Yeah.
We're going back to Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well, relativity does mess with your head because you start to realize time is, which we all think of this time as this immutable thing like a river flowing and so on. And then once you do relativity, you realize, wow, it's different for different people. That's pretty insane.
Mark's got a question about gravity and the poles, and I'm going to read it to you, and it goes like this. Maybe a long shot theory here, but I heard the magnetic poles are switching in the next 100 years. Also read an article about wolves moving rivers. The idea being that the wolves chase the animals that fed off the grass impacted the river's bank strength. Less grass meant the river banks collapses, and the shape of the river change. It's that continuum, right?
Okay.
Thus bringing wolves back to the parks with changed rivers. That being said, with the magnetic poles changing, will there be an impact on animals and thus a change on nature? Birds and other animals use magnetism for direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. And I think the answer to that is it depends upon the speed of the change because animals will adapt. Right. And so if you have a very rapid change in the poles, like say suddenly switched in a day, yeah, that's going to mess insects up that use magnetism. Right, but at the end of the day, it's probably going to be much slower than that. And because of that, we can expect, and most insects have very, comparatively short at least, lifetimes that will be able to adjust to that. So switching poles, will it happen within the next 100 years? Probably not, right? We think the average time between these cycles is something like 50,000 years. Is there a lot of unusual activity right now? Yeah, there is. Actually, it's moved quite a lot fairly recently, but we'll wait and see, right? And so wolves changing rivers, I like that one, because that's kind of interesting that it's been one of the key factors in why some rivers sort of like are more snaky than others is related to erosion on the banks.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and the grass that holds the bank together, right?
So if you have a situation where grazing is reducing the overall stability of banks, then yeah, I actually could see that. Right.
It makes sense,
I could
right?
see that, yeah.
And then, the prey leaves, then the rivers change, and then the predators follow the prey, and the cycle of life goes on.
So one of the things that my wife has worked on is there are no native crayfish in Nova Scotia, and so when you find crayfish in Nova Scotia, it means that they have come from somewhere. Yes.
Really?
There are native crayfish in New Brunswick, but not in Nova Scotia.
I'm in the rivers all the time, and I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you're seeing stuff that people have brought.
Right.
Right? So crayfish will actually destabilize banks because they'll dig a long way in, right? And then that tunnel will actually end up collapsing at some point or filled with water and collapsing. And so this is one of the concerns. If you have a very big crayfish population, it can actually impact the overall aquatic ecosystem quite significantly.
So they're invasive?
Yep.
Very much like bass?
Yep. So if you see crayfish in Nova Scotia, they are invasive. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
You see, folks, that's why we do Science Files, because I don't know about you, I learned something every day that we do this. And we didn't even scare anybody this week talking about artificial intelligence.
And in fact, the particular species we're seeing most of is something called the swamp red crayfish, which actually happens to be really good eating as well, which may be one of the reasons why someone let them go from an aquarium. Right, that's how we think they got introduced.
I've actually eaten crayfish in the past. I don't remember them being very well, but then again, I boiled them in a pop can.
Yeah. Okay, that doesn't sound delicious, but anyway, so
that was a long time ago. Yeah. I was perhaps learning some cooking science at that point.
You learned something anyway.
I did. Fire hot.
Yeah.
Crayfish bad when not boiled properly.
Yeah. So
wow, I didn't know that. So
yeah, that's actually, there was quite a few news stories about this last year, maybe 18 months ago. So Linda had a student at Madison working on it, and so they did that in association.
Did they catch them and study them?
Yes, they did. Right.
What did they do with them after? Because they're good bait.
The key things they were doing with catching pregnant females, seeing how many eggs they had, and so on. And so one of the really concerning things with crayfish is the so-called marbled crayfish, which people may not be aware of, but that can reproduce single-sex reproduction.
Right.
Hermaphrodite. That's it. Hermaphroditic reproduction. And
it doesn't need a partner.
Yeah, and so those things, once they get into an ecosystem, just are a nightmare because they'll just keep on reproducing, right? So marbled crayfish, it wasn't marbled, it was swamp red, so they were relieved about that.
Fascinating.
Yep.
That's going to do it, Dr. Rob. Appreciate you spending some time with us. Appreciate you all that dial the numbers and join the program. You make my day when you do that. Thank you to all of our guests who, like Rob, joined us, and I learned something every day. I just did. That's the beauty of the show. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of it. Don't forget, tomorrow is the Wednesday edition. That means that Dr. John's going to be in the house, and we'll be here to answer your questions. Maybe he's back from Ireland. He was in Ireland last week. That was kind of a long-distance. Remember what Casey Kasem used to call it? Long-distance dedications. Anyway, that was kind of fun. And anyway, get out there and enjoy Nova Scotia. We live in such a beautiful place. And if you find a crayfish, it's not supposed to be there. Until tomorrow, everybody, be well and be kind to one another.